Okay, so this is interview with Carolyn Avery
Have you got the
Camp Johnsen on
wonderful, but oh,
April 25th, 2015. And you go ahead and do that if you need to.
all right.
Okay. And this is the first of 3 interviews. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so first of all, these are questions we've sort of been over a little bit, but not completely. But just answer them off the cuff. So what year were you born, Mom?
1927,
Right. And what date?
August 11.
And what day of the week was that?
I do not know the day of the week.
Did your parents tell you anything about the day you were born?
No, not that I remember.
Okay. Where were you born?
In North Adams, Massachusetts.
Why were you given the first and middle name that you were given?
Why? That was the maiden name of my father's mother, Eldridge.
Okay. And what about your first name?
Carolyn. That was from my mother's mother, who was Carrie. And Mother didn't care for Carrie, so she named me Carolyn.
Right. And what was your first and most vivid memory?
Oh my. Well, I really don't remember what the first one was, but I'm sure that I remember the first Christmas, because from the first one probably until forever, while I was living home, it was a big day, and we had guests. My doctor and his wife, Mother's doctor and his wife were there, and any of my brothers that were available. They used to alternate with their wives' parents, so, and my grandparents, and we had breakfast, and then my mother got everyone out of the kitchen and told us to go to camp or go somewhere but get out of her way. So she fixed the meal, and we ate probably around 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. By the time we got to the Christmas tree, it was 4, but that was a big time. We all sat around the living room, and we watched everybody open their presents, and we were there till about 8 or 9 at night. So those Christmas days were very meaningful, and I'm sure that I remember that first one.
So you mentioned that your doctor was there. Do you want to say anything about that? Was he a friend of the family?
Yes, he was a wonderful little jolly fella. He was, I just loved him. He's like like grandpa would be. He lived in North Adams, and
what was
he was
his name?
our his name was Dr. Crawford.
Okay.
And he was our family doctor till, and I was in high school, I think, before he died. One thing I remember about him is every time Mother called him, and he always came over and came to the house. We never had to go to his office. And he would look me over, and then he'd say, well, I think we can fix that with a little pill. And he'd give me those sugar pills. And that's all they were, just sugar pills. But I loved to take those pills, so psychologically I got well.
Great. Well, can you describe, what was the house that you grew up in? Can you just describe that?
Well, it was a two-story house that was located just across the alley from the store that my great-grandfather, my grandfather, and my dad had run, and then eventually my brothers got into it. Now my nephew has it. But it was 2 stories, white house, and we only had 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. And my parents raised 3 boys and a girl in that house with
Wow.
them. Then after we left the house, Dad decided to put another bathroom in upstairs, and I remember my brothers coming home and saying, "Gee, thanks, Dad, you finally got another bathroom in." But there was 1 bedroom at the head of the stairs. My brother Paul had that, and there was another bedroom you went to the left, and instead of straight ahead, and you went to the left and up another little flight of stairs. And on the right was a twin bedroom, and that was for my 2 older brothers, Bert and Henry. So I slept in my parents' bedroom, which was a big room, and they had a double bed right inside the door, and then you went around the room, and there's a little area by the closets, and I had a single bed in there, and that's where I slept.
I remember that. Grammy was in there eventually, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Can you describe the neighborhood you grew up in?
Oh, small town neighborhood.
Uh-huh.
Houses on both sides of the street. Some businesses. The house was mixed in with businesses. Post office was on one side. But there was a house directly across from our house, and had a nice family in there. A little girl. I got to know her. She had red hair, the prettiest red hair. So, and then the store that we had was 4 stories high, and that was on the opposite side of the street.
And what was that called?
A.L. Avery and Son. That's what it was. That store was in business for over 200 years. We had our 200th anniversary when I was in high school. And it's still there, and my nephew is still running it.
So the neighborhood you grew up in, would you call it a typical neighborhood, or was it, how would you describe it to somebody who'd never been there before?
Well, I would think it was typical of a small New England town.
Uh-huh.
And most of the towns around there were pretty much the same. This was especially small. I don't think there were more than 1,200 people in the town. And then we got people from up on the hills around us. It was in the Berkshire Mountains, and we were in the valley, so
right.
We had people come off the mountain.
So tell me about your parents.
Oh.
Where
do I begin?
Well, first, where were they born?
Mother was born in Bellevue, Ohio. My dad, I'm not sure about him, but I think he was born around Shelburne or Conway, and I'm not positive where his birth took place, but it was in Massachusetts, right there, close to Charlemont.
And what memories do you have, vivid memories do you have of your parents?
Oh, wonderful memories. We had a wonderful family unit. I had 3 big brothers. Mother did have a little baby girl that died when she was a year old.
Oh.
She called Ellen. That was Ellen. And then I came along. she said I was always a gift from God to replace Ellen. So, and we were always very close, my mother and I, because my father and my three big brothers were older. My my two oldest brothers were 11 and 12 years older than I was, and then Paul was about 5.5, 6 years older than I was. And so they played golf and did things with my dad, and my mother and I did things. And then my grandparents lived on the third floor of the store building, and they were right there, close by all the time. And I was very close with them, and we had a good relationship. And Grandma and I used to sit at the piano and sing hymns together. And she was superintendent of the Sunday school, so we were very active in the church and the community, and that was nice. That was.
So, getting back a little bit to your parents, can you describe your mom? Just describe her.
What she looked like, right?
Everything, as if the people watching this may never have met her. So.
She was a very sweet lady. She had many friends. She was active in the community. She was in the women's club and the women's aid club, and she worked in the church. And one year during the national elections, she volunteered for the Republican National Committee workers. They wanted some workers in that small town, and so she took that job. She was very active socially and in the church.
So you want to talk a little about, she was from Ohio, and she was very educated, right?
Yes, she was. She went to Oberlin College in Ohio and graduated. I don't know what kind of a degree she graduated, probably a regular general degree, but yes, she was. She was a smart little lady. She probably was about 5 feet tall. She wasn't quite as tall as I am. About my size most of the time, and she had gray hair, like I do, and everybody liked her. And she and my father had many friends in the town. They were great bridge players. They loved to have people in for bridge, and they went out.
Did she have any siblings?
My mother had a twin, and that twin also died pretty early in life. And then I think that was Bessie. No, Bessie did live. I told you maybe before that they died young. That was her sister, the twin sister, Bessie, and that she was the only sibling that she had. And she passed away, but she did live to adulthood. I remember that.
Oh, okay. What did she die of?
I do not remember. I was pretty young. In fact, I never knew her and never had met her or anything. But Mother had a lot of relatives in Ohio. We went out to a family reunion, myself and my brother, one of my brothers. I never saw so many people because they came from all over the place, but they were all related in one way or other. So.
And Grandpa Avery, he was an only child, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, that story, as I said, was started by my great-grandfather, Amos, and he was an only child, and he handed it down to Oscar, who was also an only child. And then when Oscar retired, he gave it to my father, who was also an only child.